this way!
Shit,
Look!
Hey guys, this is Prince Asbel. The footage you just saw was from a body cam video off of a police officer in Wichita, Kansas. Most people know the details of this tragedy. It was a swatting prank gone horribly wrong. No lethal outcome was intended, but it did result in a police officer shooting and killing an unarmed and innocent man. I was going to make a video about the man who committed the swatting prank in the first place, but there's really nothing to be said about him that most people don't already know. Today we're going to go over how the Wichita Police Department has presented the details of the case, or at least as they did shortly after the incident occurred, because, well, you'll see. What we're going to look at first is a timeline of events presented almost 24 hours after the incident occurred by Chief Livingston of the Wichita Police Department.
On Thursday, December 28th at approximately 6:18 p.m., officers responded to 1033 West McCormick regarding a shooting call with hostages. So at 6:18 p.m., the officer working at the city building, last night we believed it was a substation, but it did come into the city building, got a call from an unknown individual that stated that he had had a disturbance, that his father had been hit over the head with a loaded gun, and then that officer, security officer, called 911 to report that information. They got cut off somehow. At 6:18, the calling party stated that he shot his dad in the head and that he was not breathing. At 6:19, the calling party stated he's holding his mom and his brother at gunpoint in the closet. The officers arrived at approximately 6:20 and cordoned off the residence. At 6:22, the calling party stated he didn't mean to kill his dad. He was arguing with his mom and things got out of hand. At 6:23, the calling party stated he wants to kill himself and light the house on fire. At 6:41, the calling party stated that he had a black handgun on him. At 6:42, the calling party stated that he was by his mom's closet. And at 6:43, he advised he had his mom and his brother in his mom's closet, and the suspect also advised that the closet he was in his mom's bedroom towards the back of the house. He also stated that he was pointing the gun at his mom and his brother, and he was not going to put the gun away. At 6:43 is when the individual on the front porch was shot. At 6:44, the suspect advised he poured gasoline all over the house and he was thinking about lighting it. The male was taken to a local hospital and pronounced dead at 7:03 p.m.
As you can tell, that's an edited montage I made. If you watch the video, he presents certain time-stamped details, but in different places throughout the video, so I went ahead and tried to cut them up and put them together in chronological order as best I could. One obvious problem, if you hadn't noticed it already, is just how many things were supposed to have happened at 6:18 p.m.
On Thursday, December 28th at approximately 6:18 p.m., officers responded to 1033 West McCormick regarding a shooting call with hostages. So at 6:18 p.m., the officer working at the city building, last night we believed it was a substation, but it did come into the city building, got a call from an unknown individual that stated that he had had a disturbance, that his father had been hit over the head with a loaded gun, and then that officer, security officer, called 911 to report that information. They got cut off somehow. At 6:18, the calling party stated that he shot his dad in the head and that he was not breathing.
I realize the police chief said approximately once in this conference. The problem is that his department had already prepared a video with audio recordings of the calls that took place during this incident, and just the call from City Hall to 911 lasted at least 43 seconds.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
Dispatch, this 582, stand by. Are you still on the line? Are you still on the line? Okay, I just had a person call down to the security desk at City Hall, and he said his mother had just hit his dad over the head with a handgun. Okay, I have his phone number, but for some reason, either he is hanging up or I can't transfer it. So I'm going to give you the phone number.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, I'll go ahead and try to call him back.
All right, bye.
Bye.
So if the call from City Hall to 911 lasted 43 seconds, there's not nearly enough time before or after for the caller to have called City Hall, and then City Hall to have called 911, and then for 911 to have also called the suspect, and for officers to be dispatched within that such a tiny window of time. It's just not possible. Not with less than 17 seconds. We're talking like 10, maybe 11 seconds. it just couldn't happen. However, that's a fairly small problem considering the fact that the chief laid out a specific timeline of events, and then the 911 call that they played during the conference, in which they posted later on Facebook, contradicted his own timeline. For example, according to Chief Livingston, one of the last things that the caller said was that he had a black handgun.
At 6:41, the calling party stated that he had a black handgun on him.
But if you listen to the 911 call, that's one of the first things that he tells them.
Okay, do you have any weapons on you?
Yeah, I do.
What kind of weapons do you have?
A handgun.
What kind of handgun is it?
I don't know, it's my dad's.
What color is it?
It's black.
Oh, and this is going to be nitpicky, but this video says this is a 911 call from the suspect, but it's not. It's a 911 call that 911 made after they got the number from City Hall, and they called the suspect. I know that's nitpicky, but I had to throw that in there. Also, according to Chief Livingston, the caller said he didn't mean to kill his dad at 6:22, which would be really close to the beginning of the call.
At 6:22, the calling party stated he didn't mean to kill his dad. He was arguing with his mom, and things got out of hand.
But in the video, that was the very last thing he said before he stopped talking.
It was an accident, so...
Okay, that's fine. Are you there? Talk to me. Hello? Are you there? Hello?
To make this point as clear as possible so you can get an idea of just how out of order everything was, here's the 911 call uncut. And now here it is broken into pieces. So we're going to play through Chief Livingston's timeline, and then I'm going to play the excerpts where the specific statements were made and then put a time marker above each one. And then we're going to put them up in a line and see if you can't tell what the problem is.
At 6:18, the calling party stated that he shot his dad in the head and that he was not breathing.
We were arguing and I shot him in the head and he's not breathing anymore.
At 6:19, the calling party stated he's holding his mom and his brother at gunpoint in the closet.
I'm just pointing the gun at them, making sure they stay in the closet, my mom and my little brother.
At 6:22, the calling party stated he didn't mean to kill his dad.
It was an accident, so...
Okay, that's fine.
He was arguing with his mom and things got out of hand. At 6:23, the calling party stated he wants to kill himself and light the house on fire.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, because I already poured gasoline all over the house. I might just set it on fire.
Okay, well, we don't need to do that, okay?
In a little bit, I might.
At 6:41, the calling party stated that he had a black handgun on him.
What kind of weapons do you have?
A handgun.
What kind of handgun is it?
I don't know, it's my dad's.
What color is it?
It's black.
At 6:42, the calling party stated that he was by his mom's closet.
Where exactly are you at in the house?
By the closet.
Okay, what closet?
My mom's.
And at 6:43, he advised he had his mom and his brother in his mom's closet, and the suspect also advised that the closet he was in his mom's bedroom towards the back of the house. He also stated that he was pointing the gun at his mom and his brother, and he was not going to put the gun away.
Is it towards the front of the house, the back of the house?
Well, like it's like towards the back, I guess. I'm just pointing the gun at them, making sure they stay in the closet, my mom and my little brother.
Okay, is there any way you can put the gun up?
No. Are you guys sending someone over here? Because then I'm definitely not going to put it away.
At 6:44, the suspect advised he poured gasoline all over the house, and he was thinking about lighting it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, because I already poured gasoline all over the house. I might just set it on fire.
Okay, well, we don't need to do that, okay?
In a little bit, I might.
You don't have to be a police officer to notice that there's something really wrong here. How could they screw up this badly? There isn't a shred of consistency here. you wouldn't be able to tell what happened when. Who's telling the truth, or are both of them wrong? You don't know. You never could know. Shortly after the conference, the WPD posted another video to Facebook in order to acknowledge one of their mistakes.
I want to clarify some information that we released. After our press conference, I learned the suspect continued to call 911 after officers had already arrived at the scene.
Really? You just now learned that? Let me replay that clip in case you missed it.
After our press conference, I learned the suspect continued to call 911 after officers had already arrived at the scene.
So you realized you made some mistakes because the caller continued to speak with 911 after the officers arrived on the scene. Yeah, I knew that already because you told me, Chief Livingston. How could you learn that the caller kept talking to 911 after the officers arrived when you told us that's exactly what happened? You knew that already. How could you learn it? How would this tip you off that you made a mistake, that you were right the whole time, that you rediscovered, apparently, that things played out as you said, that the officers arrived and that the caller kept talking? I don't understand that at all. The thing is, he's right. The information they did present was inaccurate. It's just really sad that even when trying to set the record straight, the chief can't even give a rational explanation for how he discovered he screwed up in the first place. What was one of the mistakes that he pointed out?
The male was actually shot at 6:28 p.m. and not 6:46 p.m. as earlier reported.
Oh, you said Andrew Finch was shot at 6:46? That's funny. I thought you said he was shot at 6:43.
At 6:43 is when the individual on the front porch was shot.
In actuality, Chief Livingston said both of those things in the original conference. He said 6:43 at one point, and then during the Q&A, he said 6:46 p.m.
At 6:43 is when the individual on the front porch was shot. The individual was shot at 6:46. The male was actually shot at 6:28 p.m. and not 6:46 p.m. as earlier reported.
So now he's saying Finch was shot at 6:28 p.m. Okay, that may be true, but heck if I know. I mean, heck if he knows, quite frankly. I don't think you could ever figure out exactly what happened when based on the information they provided. He says this is a complex case and that in their rush to get the information out to the public, they presented a couple of inaccuracies.
As you can probably imagine, this investigation is dynamic and complex, and there's a lot of information to go through, and we were trying to get it to you in a timely manner.
I can appreciate that he wasn't going to say, we have no idea what we're talking about. I'm sorry, we've screwed up left and right. We have no idea what happened when. We have no clue what happened just yet. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't keep his job if he were that direct. But this does play into one of the biggest suspicions surrounding Andrew Finch's death. Since it wasn't premeditated, we're thinking maybe it had to do with incompetence. If Andrew Finch's death at the hands of the Wichita Police Department, if it was premeditated, I don't think they would have been so sloppy with their presentation of the facts. I mean, if there was a cover-up, I think they would be I would think that the mistake level would be kept at a minimum. So I think we can rule out any premeditation. The question is the Wichita Police Department a bad police force? Is it staffed with poorly trained police officers? Is there any explanation for all the mistakes that we've seen so far, not the least of which was the death of an innocent man, that could salvage them from the charge of incompetence? I don't know. I can't think of any. The best I can think of is that Andrew Finch may have inadvertently caused his own death. How could he have caused his own death? Well, I've watched the body cam footage multiple times, and right before he gets shot, a black blur appears directly in front of him. This looks like it could be an object that Andrew Finch had picked up and was holding in his hands, and that could have been the thing that made the police officer shoot him. Maybe he thought it was a gun. Unfortunately, nothing about this case is allowed to be simple, apparently. Chief Livingston said they didn't find any weapons on him.
Can you confirm the man, Finch, the 28-year-old, he wasn't armed?
He was not armed.
And in none of the videos they've released do they say that, hey, you can see that black blur and that was an object he was holding even though it wasn't a weapon. They haven't said anything like that. So who even knows at this point? However, I was still open to the idea that maybe Andrew Finch did cause his own death by raising and lowering his arms. Andrew Finch did raise his hands, or at least you can see his right arm. He raised his right arm. You have to zoom in and pause the video to see this, but you can see he raised his right arm, but then he dropped it down to his waist again. That's a really dangerous thing to do when you have police officers screaming at you to show them your hands. Show your hands! I'm going to give you the opinion of a retired narcotics detective who had this to say about what to do with your hands when you encounter police officers.
Let the officers see your hands. You always want to make sure that they can see that your hands are empty. Take your hands out of your pockets. Take your hands out from behind your back. Either relax them at your sides or fold them in front of you, but you want to make sure that the officers can see your hands. That's what an officer is looking for officer safety. What are your hands doing? Are they reaching or trying to retrieve a weapon from your rear waistband or from inside your pocket? And so don't be surprised if your hands are in your pocket. The officer asks you to take your hands out of your pockets. And that is the last and worst time, the worst time to argue with an officer is when he asks you to take your hands out of your pocket. When I worked the streets, if someone refused to take their hands out of their pockets, they were on the ground within seconds, and I was assisting them in removing their hands from their pockets. The most important thing to an officer out on the streets is not your rights. It's not overtime. It's not the next arrest. It's not promotion. It's getting home to their families. And so if they have to inconvenience you and even hurt you to ensure their safety, they're going to do it. So always let the officer see your hands, and try not to, be too Italian with your hands. And I say that as an Italian because I talk a lot with my hands. Just try to keep your hands relaxed down at your side or in front of you, because officers will determine the level of threat you are or aren't based on the movement and placement of your hands.
I'd seen this video years ago, and I was prepared to think that maybe Andrew Finch inadvertently caused his own death. However, it turns out Finch may have already raised and lowered his hands multiple times prior to being shot.
I mean, he raised his hands and dropped them more than once? Is that how it went?
Yeah, there were several commands given. What you can't hear, you hear the officer primarily that has the Axon body camera, but you have the officers from the other side also giving commands, and they were all consistent about put your hands up, walk towards us. But he continued to drop them down by his waistband, which is a concern because that's where people typically would put a handgun or some type of weapon.
If you listen carefully, you'll notice the person asks the question, did he raise and lower his hands multiple times prior to being shot? And Chief Livingston says, yeah, he was warned several times. So I don't know if Chief Livingston said yes, he raised yes to the question, did he raise and lower his hands multiple times, or yes, he was warned multiple times. But if the former is true, and he had raised his hands and lowered them multiple times before he got shot, then why was he shot the last time? It can't only be because he raised and then lowered his hands again. So if he did do it multiple times prior, I'd like to know why that last time the police officer decided to take the shot. There's also the small fact that the house the 911 caller claimed to be in was a one-story house, and the police showed up at a two-story house.
Like, is this a one-story or two-story house?
It's one story.
It seems like if the officers that arrived on the scene were patched into the 911 call, that maybe they might have thought, guys, we might have the wrong house here. Assuming they were patched into the call. I mean, who even knows at this point? This entire case is a complete mess, and the details as presented by the police is also a complete mess. It wouldn't be quite so ironic if the police chief hadn't said that they released the audio and video that they did in order to build trust between them and their community.
I want to point out that we believe there's a compelling reason to release some of this video and some of the audio because it's in the public's best interest. The Wichita Police Department wants to maintain and continue to build trust with our community. The other video will be withheld because there is an ongoing criminal investigation. Just like any other criminal investigation that we have, we withhold that video. We made the exception for the 7 seconds because we thought the community deserved to see it, and we want to build and maintain trust with our community. As you can probably imagine, this investigation is dynamic and complex, and there's a lot of information to go through. and we were trying to get it to you in a timely manner. Please understand this is a dynamic investigation, and bear with us as we clarify the timeline.
Okay, so we should bear with you. I can understand that coming from people in certain situations. We're talking about a police force that killed an innocent man. They're already in the hot seat because an innocent man was killed by them. And then they produce details, they completely and totally screw it up, and they want us to bear with them more. I mean, I don't have like a personal stake in this case because none of my family members were killed. But the thing is, if there's nobody who's going to ask questions about, do you guys know what you're doing? If there's nobody who's going to ask those questions after an innocent man is killed, and after that, you can't get your story straight about anything that happened. I mean, isn't that one of the things you do when you interrogate a suspect, is that if they can't keep their story straight, then obviously you can't trust that they know what they're talking about, that they might perhaps be guilty even? I mean, if the specific minute of time that the shot was fired was their only mistake, I can understand that. But when you contradict yourself a couple dozen times, it seems like, I'm sorry, I can't accept that that has to do with rushing to get the information out there. If I was the one who prepared the 911 call for release to the general public, and then I also was the one who prepared the timeline for Chief Livingston to read aloud, how could I get all those details wrong and say that certain things that were said at the end of the call were said at the beginning, something was said at 6:41 before something was said at 6:22? What would that be? Incompetence. That's my whole point. I reached out to the WPD about this case, and they said they will not be releasing any further details about this case until the case is closed. And that seems like a smart move, considering how bad of a job they did when they tried to present some details of the case. Best not to release any more in case they screw up again. So I will be keeping a close eye on this case, and I will follow up with a video should anything interesting come to light as a result. But in the meantime, all the relevant links will be in the description below, so you can find the videos that I quoted from the WPD, as well as a link to a website that will show you how to download videos from their Facebook page. If you don't know how to download Facebook videos, there will be a link that will show you how to do just that, should you desire to do so. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again on the Prince Asbel channel.